This post is a continuation of the 2 previous posts I made. If you haven't read those posts yet, I strongly recommend that you read those posts first and get caught up. Now for the story. I woke up a little earlier than usual yesterday. I kept rewatching the video in which Michael murdered the poor lass. If Maria could identify her, I might get a lead. I looked over the pictures I took the first day I started following him and saved one with the girl's face on my phone. The first thing I did was investigate the house in which Michael committed the murder. There's a slim chance of him being held up in there. I drove out to the house and noticed no cars. I picked the lock anyways and searched the house top to bottom. I found no traces of Michael or any clues that would help me. I decided that I needed to head over to the hospital and question Maria. The murder girl seemed to be the only lead I had. When I got there, I asked to visit her, and when I got to her room, I saw her sitting up in a bed with a notepad and a pen on a table beside her bed. I asked the nurse if we could have some alone time. "Is that okay with you?" the nurse asked Maria. Maria grabbed her pencil and notepad and wrote, "Yes." The nurse walked out of the room, leaving us alone. "I sent you an email to meet me after work. Why didn't you show?" I asked. "I didn't see an email from you," she wrote down. "Does your husband have access to your email account?" I pressed. "I left my desktop logged into my email. He must have got in that way," she wrote down. "He was cheating on you, by the way. I followed him and discovered him having sex with some woman. I pulled out the picture of the woman on my phone. Have you seen this woman before?" She held my phone in her hands and examined the picture for a minute. I was beginning to lose hope that she wouldn't recognize her at all, but she handed me the phone and picked up her notepad. "Several months ago, Michael forgot the lunch that I packed for him at home. I saw her in his cubicle. She must be one of his co-workers." I didn't get a name, but it was a start. I knew that following this lead was the best shot I had at catching Michael. I thanked her and stood up prepared to leave. Before I could turn and walk away, she grabbed my sleeve. I looked over to her, and she began to write, "Find Michael and bring him to justice. You will be paid." I nodded and left. I went over to Michael's place of work in order to question his employer. I asked to make an appointment with the manager, and the receptionist told me that he wasn't able to speak with me. I was shown to a nice office in which I was able to speak with the manager. I will be referring to the manager as Joseph. We greeted one another, and I showed him the picture of the woman. I'm a private investigator, and I was hired to find a missing person. This woman works here, correct? Joseph looked a little uneasy. I understand that this question may have shocked him a little. He then replied, "Yes, she's employed here. I'm guessing that she hasn't been showing up for work these past few days, correct?" "Correct," he answered quickly. "Can you please tell me her name?" I asked. "The person who employed your services didn't tell you," he pressed. "They don't know her name. She isn't the person I was employed to find, but I think that she could lead me to find the person," I explained. "This sounds all too odd to me. I'm afraid you will need to go elsewhere for your information," Joseph told me. I pulled a $50 bill from my pocket and placed it in front of me. "President Grant would like to know her name." He looked at the bill for a few seconds. Then he told me her name. I will be referring to the woman as Clarice. He reached for the $50 bill, but I put my hand over it. "What type of car does she drive? And what is the license plate number?" I asked. "I don't know," he answered. "Look through your files. Figure it out." He turned to his desktop and began pulling up some files. After a few minutes, he told me the car and the plate. I figured that she would have left the car at the diner the night she was killed, but it was probably towed by now. I decided to check the diner first, just in case. After finding no cars that matched the description, I checked online to see if any towing lots were storing any cars matching the description and the license plate I was giving. Luckily, I found a lot over a mile away that had Clarice's car. I planned on searching the car for clues. I stopped by a sporting store and purchased a ski mask, then drove over to the lot and waited about an hour so that the sun was down and I could sneak into the lot. During this hour, I was scouting the lot for an entry point, an exit point, and of course, the car itself. I located all of these, put on my ski mask, and prepared to sneak in. I doubted that they would let me search the car without being the owner, even if I proved myself to be a PI. I located all three things and snuck in, quickly and quietly. I approached the car and crouched beside the passenger door. I unlocked the door using the slip knot method. For anyone reading who doesn't know, the slip knot method involves tying a loose knot in the middle of a long piece of string. The knot is slid in between the car door and the door frame, placed around the lock and tightened. Once tightened, the string is brought up, rendering the door unlocked. You can learn more about this method with a simple Google search. After I unlocked the door, I closed it and began looking for clues. Once I opened the glove compartment, I found a powered-off iPhone 6. I powered on the phone and saw a picture of Clarice as the lock screen. At first I was confused as to why the phone was so in her car, but then it all began to make sense. Michael must have told her to leave it in her car so that no one could locate his little home away from home via GPS. I continued searching her car and found nothing noteworthy. I even popped the hood and the trunk just to make sure that there was no clues being missed. I came to the conclusion that her phone was my only lead. Clarice's phone had a passcode, so I couldn't get in. I did, however, have a coworker who was an expert at this sort of thing. I hastily snuck out of the lot and drove over to his house. He is sort of a loner, so I don't worry too much about catching him at a bad time. Michael most likely disposed of Clarice's body and is confident that no one has found her body. This meant that the possibility of him hiding out in Clarice's house was present. Once I arrived at my friend's house, I explained to him that I was on a case and needed his help opening this phone. He invited me inside and started on the phone. He plugged the phone into some sort of device that helped him bypass the security. I'm not going to act like I understand what he's doing, but he managed to get into the phone within 10 minutes. He disabled the passcode security feature, which allowed me to use the phone at my leisure. I thanked him and got back into my car. When I opened Clarice's phone, the first thing that I noticed was the wallpaper. The wallpaper was a picture of her and a man that I couldn't recognize. He was hugging her from the back and they were kissing. I looked a little closer and noticed that they were wearing matching rings. I opened the Maps app and looked through her favorites. Luckily, there was a location named Home. I typed the location into my GPS and drove over. Once I neared the location, I parked my car around the corner and put my ski mask on. I opened Clarice's contacts and saw a contact saved as Home. I saved the number and devised a plan. I walked over to Clarice's house and stood across the street. I crouched next to a trash can and looked at the house with binoculars. I saw a car parked out front, but it didn't belong to Michael. The lights were turned on. I noticed that I had a clear view of the landline from the front window. I crossed the street and crouched down a few meters from the window and drew my gun. My plan was to call the landline, and if Michael was anywhere near it, I would shoot him dead. I turned off the safety and aimed near the landline. I pulled out my phone and called the landline. I could see it ringing through the window, but no one went to answer. I called again, and still, nothing. After calling a third time, I decided that I should investigate the house. I knew that someone was in the house, I just didn't know who. I walked up to the window and looked through. I saw a TV left turned on. I knew that if Michael was in the house, I had no time to waste. So I kicked the door right next to the lock with all my force. The door busted open. I held my gun and looked around. The first thing that I noticed was the awful smell. After a little investigating, I discovered the source of the smell. The man from Clarice's wallpaper was lying down on the floor, dead. He had his throat slit open, and he looked like he'd been dead for several hours. I ran to the back of the house, trying to see if Michael had tried to escape through the back door, but it was shut and locked. Then I felt Clarice's phone vibrate. I checked it, and it said, "Michael." I answered. "Where are you?" I asked.
You're smarter than you look. I was surprised that you were able to discover my little secret, but I'm more surprised that you tracked me down.
I haven't told anyone about Clarice yet. If you turn yourself in, the only charge you're looking at is the assault charge. You and I are the only people in the world who know about that. Come to the police station. Get yourself a lawyer. You still have life. Don't throw it all away. He chuckled.
I'll take my chances. You're pretty smart. You made a great adversary. The only mistake you made was thinking that you were smarter than me.
With that, he hung up the phone. I heard a car start up out front. I ran to the living room trying to catch him before he escaped, but he was already driving off by the time he came into view. I aimed my gun to shoot his tires before he turned out of view, but then I smelled something. I smelled gas. I ran out of the house and sprinted full speed to my car. While I was sprinting, I heard an explosion behind me. I hopped into my car and drove over to the hotel that I was staying at. I got into my room and placed my things on my desk. I couldn't help thinking about the conversation we had. I kept replaying it over and over in my mind. I couldn't help thinking about what he said, and I knew that there was some truth to it. There was no doubt that I underestimated him. I didn't expect him to be as patient, crafty, or as astute as he turned out to be. Despite all the uncertainties I have, I'm certain that my situation just got much more dire. Underestimating him is not a mistake that I plan on making again. What's up guys, Psychotic Maniac here. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, slap a like on it and share it with your friends. So you don't miss out on any of my future content, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. And remember, everyone is a tad bit insane.